Really? Good evening. We will call the meeting to order, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for coming, everyone. Roll call, Mr. Lombard?
Oh.
Yes.
Cody? Yep. Sasha?
Yeah.
Talcott?
Yes.
Scott? Yes.
With that, is there anything on the agenda that needs to be revised this evening?
Madam Chair, would note personnel item number 6, the dollar per hour rate should be $14 per hour. Please make that change. I would recommend approval of the agenda as amended.
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. No conflict of interest disclosure waiver request tonight. There is also no community input that I am aware of tonight. That takes us to our general business. Administration report, Superintendent Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few items to just update the board on here this evening. Elementary construction continues down south. Would note that the naming facilities committee will be scheduled out. Anticipate having that process completed by through the month of November with a recommendation in December to the board. Other than that, no real updates on that. Certainly, if anyone has a level of interest in touring that facility, feel free to let me know. Schedule one out. Staffing timeline, I want to note that the positions have been posted generally internally. I would note that we will plan on processing those internal transfers in January. There's been a good amount of internal transfer requests. I would tell you we may be in a situation where we're able to basically staff that school out in its entirety with current Brandon Valley staff and then utilize the vacated positions and or new hires to fill in at our current facilities. So that's certainly a very positive item. And then obviously as we work through our budgeting and staffing out process, in February is generally when you see those recommendations for new staffing. We will have some new staff recommended, not only because of the new construction, the elementary building, but also due to student growth. Please note, again, legislative breakfast, Wednesday, December 9th, here at 7:30 a.m. in the community room. We'll firm that up once we get through the election process. Final state aid enrollment is in for the school year. We have 4,681 students. We note that's growth of 254 students this year, so extremely positive item for the Brandon Valley School District. Undoubtedly, there are challenges associated with growth, but an incredibly positive thing, as Business Manager Lundberg always alludes to, that student enrollment is what drives the funding mechanisms that we have to work with. So very positive in terms of student growth here for this fall enrollment number. I also just provided a 3-year fall enrollment review. Our fall 2018, 19, and 20 enrollments are as follows, and you can see that we've grown substantially over the course of the last 3 years. State of the Schools address, typically you would receive this either at the end of October or beginning of November. I would tell you that there's a limited amount of data available for inclusion within the State of the Schools address because we didn't have a state assessment last spring, but we will still deliver a State of the Schools address in November, reporting on what data we have available. Also relevant to note that Mitch, the school district and school ranking website, recently announced Brandon Valley School District was the #1 district in the state of South Dakota for this year, in this year's rankings. Academic calendar development for next school year. I would note that we're working on the initial drafts, and that draft works through the Administrative Council, Teacher Liaison Council, and also the Classified Council prior to being brought to you. Would certainly plan on having an initial presentation at our first meeting in January, and then potential action and adoption at the end of January. it's important to do that in a timely manner so we can communicate next year's calendar to our families. Lastly, just a few calendar items this current year to note. There's no school on Veterans Day, November 11th. Wednesday through Friday off for Thanksgiving. We have a 2-hour early dismissal on December 23rd to kick off our winter break. Winter break runs December 24th through the 3rd, and school resumes Monday, January 4th. The only other item I didn't have included in this report specifically, but just wanted to note, the opportunity to participate on the South Dakota High School Activities Association Return to Play Task Force, and we're currently working through the winter guidance for schools to consider as we prepare for the winter activity season, so appreciate the opportunity to be involved with that. Some really good practical strategies for our high school programs to consider as they get ready to participate in winter activities. It's certainly relevant to note that we've participated through the fall here with what I would call relatively good success. We have lost some activities across the state due to COVID-related reasons, but overall we've been able to manage those situations and those processes, and we've seen a lot of our fall activities have a conclusion and have their final events. At this point in time, I think we have 2 fall activities remaining. That would be volleyball and that would be football, would be our final 2 fall activities that we have for the South Dakota High School Activities Association. So with that, I would certainly entertain any questions you have prior to getting into just the boundary line report. All right, very good. Moving into the boundary line report, I guess what I would note is no specific changes to the last update. We did have our informational meeting for families. Greatly appreciate those individuals that attended and asked clarifying questions. Appreciate their time through that process. Would note, I think that our ability to disseminate information in an electronic format and through video has been very helpful in our communication strategies as folks are able to view it from a distance as opposed to have to come to a public meeting. So would note that all of that information has been disseminated. We will provide additional updates to our families as we move through the process. We will have a formal report for you at our next meeting, and we will look to have approval of the recommended boundary lines. Would note the boundary lines are included within this report here. Specifically, this is an image of the proposed boundary lines with the addition of our new elementary school. I'll give you just a high-level overview. Get it? So if you look at the purple and the green point there, the most northern point of that new elementary boundary splits the difference between Veterans Parkway and 6 Mile Road. It starts at Rice Street. It extends south, again splitting the difference between Veterans Parkway and 6 Mile Road. What that does is that allows all new growth on both sides of Veterans Parkway to be absorbed into the new elementary school. And then once we get to Madison Street, we jog over. You can see the slight jog there. We jog over to Veterans Parkway, and we follow Veterans Parkway south all the way to 10th Street, which is right there. What that does, and the reason that we jog over to Veterans Parkway is wanting to maintain that neighborhood school concept. That allows all of the new residential growth that is occurring just on the west side of 6 Mile Road, right across the street from Fred Asson Elementary. All those new residential homes were able to maintain that neighborhood concept and pull them into Fred Asson Elementary. And then, very simply, we take 10th Street all the way down to Highway 11, and then we go up Highway 11 very slightly to 266th Street, and then carry that all the way to the east to the state line. Would note that approximately 200 students, if all individuals choose to go to their newly assigned attendance center, will be moved. So you're talking about reducing Fred Asson from about 600 to about 400 is about how that ends up looking. We anticipate starting with the new elementary school being somewhere between 220 kids, give or take. I'm going to say with a standard deviation of 20, so 200 to 250-ish. What I anticipate, my early anticipation would be 2 sections of kindergarten, 2 sections of first, 2 sections of second, 2 sections of third, and 1 section of 4th grade for next year. Again, those are tentative numbers. We'll know more after we work with our families through the process of them choosing to keep their 3rd graders at their current attendance center if they want to do that, and then also as we work through the open enrollment process for all other children in those respective schools. So, again, high-level overview. The 2 elementary boundaries that see an impact to the new additional school are obviously Fred Assam and obviously Valley Springs. So those are the recommended boundary lines for 2021-22. And then this would be a high-level boundary concept for what we look like in the year 2040 when we have the additional elementary schools that we know are in BV Vision 2040. Ultimately, what you can see here is what I would say is in 5 to 7 years when you have an East Side Elementary built at that location, Valley Springs Elementary closes, and that alleviates capacity, and we remove some Robert Bennis Elementary boundary, alleviating capacity at Robert Bennis Elementary, drawing some of that capacity into the East Side Elementary, and then ultimately the closure of Valley Springs with them moving to East Side Elementary. And then I'm going to say in 12 to 15 years, if that comes to reality with the growth that we expect, etc. You have a West Side Elementary location, and ultimately what that does is you just take off the top or the furthest northwest corner of our new elementary boundary, and then incorporate our northwest corner, which is impacting Brandon Elementary. This alleviates capacity at Brandon Elementary and puts all of those individuals in the pink in our new West Side Elementary. So again, high-level concept of what BV Vision 2040 looks like. It is relevant to note that as we talk about this, if we have 2 elementary schools, the general concept would be that the West Side, Fred Assam, and Sparta Elementary zones would feed your South intermediate school. So of those 3 elementary boundaries would feed 1 intermediate school, and then your Brandon Elementary, RBE, and East Side Elementary would feed your other intermediate school. So people, when they know which elementary they're in, it would be a funnel approach to the intermediate school. And it is relevant to note the biggest point of concern in our BV Vision 2040 was 1 middle school or 2 middle schools. That was an item that we struggled to find consensus on as a group. So when we get to that trigger point within Brandon Valley Middle School, when we get to that point, we'll reconvene the facility review committee and have conversations and determine whether we want to go 1 large middle school or whether we want to have 2 smaller middle schools. I would tell you that if you have 2 smaller middle schools, it would certainly make sense to have 1 intermediate school funnel right into that respective middle school. So those would just be the high-level items to note. I'll save the best for last, which I would note is arguably the most challenging component of a boundary line change, and that is navigating elementary student enrollments that are impacted by the boundary line change. So what I can tell you is the committee ultimately recommended that all 3rd grade students are eligible to remain at their current attendance center. So regardless, they don't have to open enroll, they don't have to work through any of that process. If they're a 3rd grader right now, they are allowed to stay in the attendance center that they currently attend. However, they are subject to in-district open enrollment, the transportation policy, and no transportation services are provided. So ultimately, if I want my third grader to stay in their current attendance center, and it's not the attendance center that my residence is zoned in, I am responsible for transporting them to that attendance center. Then the other item to note is that all other current elementary students may submit an in-district open enrollment application, and they are subject to in-district open enrollment transportation policy. Again, parents are responsible for transporting them to their open enrollment attendance center, and they're also subject to the open enrollment capacity component. With that being said, I would note we work extremely hard and want to honor the requests of those families that are currently in an attendance center if they want to open enroll to that attendance center. If a third grader has a sibling, we'll work very hard to allow them to maintain all of their children in that respective attendance center. We'll do the best we can. I can't guarantee that we will allow their open enrollment to happen, but they need to trust that we'll do everything we can to allow them to stay in their attendance center of their choice if they are displaced, for lack of a better phrase. But they need to be cognizant of the fact that they will not be providing transportation services to that respective attendance center. So with that, certainly entertain any questions that you have on boundary line update.
That is posted the administrator for replacement at Valley Springs, because we have not made an announcement on that, correct?
No, not yet. Typically, I'll probably do that in December, give or take.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Superintendent Larson. No board policy tonight, so that takes us to our general business, consent approval, items number 1 and 2. I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Personnel items, 1 through 9, with the change that was amended at the beginning of the meeting for number 6. I would entertain a motion to approve those as presented, please.
Second.
There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Under communication, there's a thank you note from an employee, if you'd like to review that. That takes us to our board report section. Does anyone have a formal report they would like to give tonight on the committee?
I'll speak briefly about the student activities curriculum and technology, as we had a meeting recently. Before I get there, because the committee is titled Student Activities, Curriculum and Technology, take a quick moment. Mr. Marshall's not here, but I saw something that he posted, so we certainly want to say what an amazing fall it has been for our activities. We have state soccer champion, girls, boys qualified. A great weekend this weekend with high finishes by both the girls and boys cross country, by the cheer, by the dance. You have the football team and the volleyball team both having great seasons. So it's been an amazing fall. It's, even dealing with all the tremendous difficulties that those coaches and athletes have had to encounter. So congratulations to all of them. In regards to the curriculum committee meeting, really a couple of pieces to it. First of all, Mr. Babb shared an outlook for us, or a peek into what COVID has been and what you have to deal with in terms of providing special education services and all the pieces that go with that. I just want people to know that our special education department has been really working overtime, like everybody has, to provide services for their kids. If for some reason we would have to change our instructional pattern, we still have plans to serve those kids just as we did in the spring, but even more so now, and whether that be someday a hybrid approach or a stay-at-home approach, know that department is definitely on top of that piece of it. Director Nelson shared with us the cycle and where we're at in the different cycles in terms of what we're dealing with in terms of which curriculum piece, what step we're at, and so forth. And so that process continues. And like everything else, COVID has made that process a little bit more challenging and has affected the timeline a little bit more. But still going forward with everything from, English and the math will come next. So we have that. Not a lot to talk about on the testing front right now. We're going forward and we'll see what happens. And of course, we don't have a lot to report, and that'll be quite apparent, I think, when we get the state of the schools report. Finally, it was amazing to see an insight into those people who are providing online instruction for our students. We spent some time, and I would encourage people to go ahead and look at that elementary, for instance, each of those grades. You can look and see the work that those people are doing, putting videos together, and all the things that they do. I was overwhelmed. I have talked to some people in the days since then and just have sung the praises of those people, and I'm absolutely convinced that our people at the middle school and high school and intermediate school level who are providing sections and instruction on English or math or whatever are also doing amazing work. And so for those people in our district that are choosing to receive education in an online format, I really feel that we should be proud of what our staff has done to put that together and the work that they do. So if you know any of those people, I'd encourage you to congratulate them and support them. And that's the report.
November 9th, we have our South Dakota Legislative Day. So I'll be going, Sarah Murphy, delegate. It will be virtual, so it'll be a little bit different this year. I will tell you that there's not anything late breaking for this year. As you can understand, a lot of it's been COVID focused, so we're not presenting anything that's going to be groundbreaking, other than I think we're still pushing for making sure that the state gives to education and our teachers the raise and the money that we've always been fighting for. So I think that's top of mind. I would tell you that for our executive team, that has been our focus, to make sure that we don't divide the voices, that we keep the top priorities and not divide voices. The other thing is local control, so we've been really keeping that in mind as well. So if you have anything that you would like me to go forward with, I will send you out each of the positions so you can see those. There wasn't much for changes other than some grammatical things, but those are kind of the main things. But it'll be virtual, so that's the biggest thing. They're also changing it to a full day meeting, so the executive team that we can meet that morning prior to. So, but I'll keep you posted on anything that changes. To what Greg had said, or excuse me, Dr. Dakota, it's been an amazing season. It's hard with all the COVID goes on. Sometimes we overlook all the success we're having. So I just wanted to again talk about all the athletics that are having great success. I know our oral turf team has had some phenomenal success as well, and they've been practicing and competing virtual. So kudos to that team as well. Van overcame a lot, and they also had a phenomenal year. And then to also get a #1 again in the school districts, that goes to every single individual in our school district. I can't thank anyone enough for what you all do. You guys have definitely risen above and beyond for everything. Every single teacher, administrator, in dietary, special services, every person, and then all of our students and our parents too that have supported us. So thank you so very much for everything that has been going on in the school district. It would have been an easy year to say, oh, did we, we just let some things go, but we didn't. We continued to push in every single area, and it shows. So thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much. That looks like it takes us to the end of our scheduled agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn, please. There's been a first and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and enjoy the weather.